and welcome to New Wave Global. And you just tuned in to Unraveled with Marvi Sirmed. India has erupted in protests against Prime Minister Modi's government, it seems. On the one hand, a coalition of 10 major trade unions and farmers' groups organized a massive protest and strike on July 9, Bharat Bandh, resulting in disruptions to public services, manufacturing, transportation, everyday business in several parts of the country. On the other hand, major opposition parties have joined hands protesting against the recent announcement regarding the electoral rolls in Bihar, which the opposition accuses will remove more than 20 million people from the electoral rolls in Bihar. The Patna Bandh protests, the Bihar Bandh protests, which is what our focus of today's episode is. But we will definitely cover the Bharat Bandh strike in the next episode. Keep watching. The Election Commission of India has recently announced the initiation of a Special Intensive Revision, SIR, Special Intensive Revision of voters' rolls in Bihar, just months before the 2025 assembly elections, which are going to happen in probably October or November this year. Civil society and opposition leaders are denouncing this not merely as some administrative cleanup, but as a politically motivated gambit by a flustered BJP-led central government, desperate to salvage electoral fortunes after its aggressive post-Pahalgam strategy that appears to have backfired, not just domestically, but also internationally. The April 22, 2025 Pahalgam terror attack that killed 26 tourists, 26 innocent civilians. But it also triggered India attacking Pakistan in the name of some operation against terrorism. Strange logic. But far from rallying the global backing, India encountered something much of which could be called diplomatic isolation, in fact. At the BRICS summit in Rio, for example, more recently, leaders issued a forceful condemnation of the attack, which Pakistan also did, if you remember, immediately after the attack. But notably, the summit participants did not mention Pakistan by name, which India would have liked them to do. Instead, they condemned the terrorism in general terms, like Pakistan did. Before that, just a week before that, in the SCO defense ministers meeting, India refused to sign a joint statement that omitted a reference to the Pahalgam attack, but mentioned Balochistan terrorism in Balochistan, which India saw as skewed in Pakistan's favor. And before that, even 7 multi-party delegations sent to 33 countries failed to produce clear diplomatic dividends, despite high-profile visits led by figures like Shashi, Tharoor, Ghulam Nabi Azad, and whatnot, Manish Tiwari, all the bright stars of Indian politics. Even US President Trump's comments offered only perfunctory support with no strategic follow-through. In fact, President Trump keeps issuing, till now, a tease here and there for New Delhi. Every time he talks to media or he's on a public platform, he doesn't forget to do so. So now coming to domestic situation in India, domestically also, Prime Minister Modi's handling faced sharp criticism. Defense officials have been heard issuing contradictory statements about India's losses during the May strike, and it eroded claims of decisive success, among people's minds. Whatever media says, whatever Indian media says, in people's mind, it did erode India's victorious claims of decisive success. with nationalistic rhetoric failing to generate momentum ahead of Bihar's polls. BJP appears concerned and increasingly reliant on internal administrative levers to shape electoral outcomes. Special Intensive Revision, SIR, the holy SIR. Under this, around 40 million voters in Bihar, largely poor, migrant, Dalit, Muslim, all marginalized communities, must resubmit their electoral forms. The critics allege that the change purposely excludes previously accepted IDs like ration cards, Aadhaar cards, and maybe school certificates, uh, and instead mandates documents such as registered tenancy deeds, electricity bills, water bills, or formal land records, which many in Bihar cannot access. Opposition parties and civil society are warning that this creates administrative barriers that disproportionately affect groups that have historically leaned against the ruling alliance, against BJP and its coalition parties, which are part of NDA, ruling NDA, National Democratic Alliance. And also, it sounds suspicious. The timing is suspicious. Just before the polls, a rolling annual summary revision could have avoided this controversy, but launching a special revision just months before the elections, they're almost around the corner. We are sitting in July, and the election are going to happen in October and November. It raises suspicion. So the critics argue that this is a tactical political intervention to reshape the voter landscape at the 11th hour, literally at the 11th hour, drawing parallels to alleged role engineering in Maharashtra 2024. Remember what happened in Maharashtra? In November 2024, the BJP-led Mahayuti alliance, if you remember, had achieved a decisive victory in the Maharashtra Legislative Assembly elections in 2024. So the alliance secured 235 out of some 288 seats. The BJP alone got 132 seats, clear-cut victory. But at that time, uh, opposition leaders like, for example, Rahul Gandhi, the leader of the main opposition party, Indian National Congress, had made allegations of voter roll manipulation and rigging. The major allegation was that the voter rolls for the 2024 election in Maharashtra were inflated with fake entries, and that there was a significant increase in registered voters between the 2024 Lok Sabha elections, which were held in phases, and the last phase, the final phase, ended in June 2024, and the assembly poll, Maharashtra assembly polls, which were held in November 2024. It was also alleged that the Election Commission of India was manipulating electoral rolls to disenfranchise voters at the behest of the BJP. Even at that time, Rahul Gandhi had alleged that the EC was compromised and that the law governing the appointment of election commissioners and the chief election commissioner was amended to heavily favor the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party. The major allegation was that there were no stakeholder consultations at that time, and even now, just fast forward to now, the opposition parties, they have been asserting that there were no consultations that ECI invited while doing making the SIR decision, and appears to have acted unilaterally, completely sidelining recognized political stakeholders and local civil society in what should have been an inclusive process. So the credibility of the SIR exercise is further undermined by how the current election commissioners were appointed in the first place. The chief election commissioner and other election commissioner, the act, this act was named as the Chief Election Commissioner and the Other Election Commissioners Act 2023. Now, this act replaced the constitutionally inspired collegium previously, uh, uh, that included the Chief Justice of India, with a panel consisting of Prime Minister and a Union Cabinet Minister alongside the Cabinet Minister was to be nominated by the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, whoever was the Leader of Opposition. This gave the executive an overwhelming advantage. Prime Minister and Prime Minister's Prime Minister appoints a minister. So he and his appointed minister, effectively sidelining judicial oversight. And Section 7 of the same law that governs the appointment, it allows a quorum of just 2 members, which means what? That in practice, decisions can be made without the opposition's concurrence. Only Prime Minister and his appointed minister can sit and make decisions, and, well, everything is hunky-dory. So the petitions challenging this process as unconstitutional are still pending before the Supreme Court. In contrast, may I remind, Pakistan's Election Commission's appointments are constitutionally mandated under Article 213 of the Constitution of Pakistan. They require a consensus between the Prime Minister and the Leader of Opposition, who jointly forward 3 names to a parliamentary committee. And this parliamentary committee has equal representation from the government and opposition benches, which then confirms the appointment. While Pakistan's process has its flaws, granted, and it has also been, in practice, it has also been politicized, it still embeds an explicit power-sharing requirement, ensuring that no party can unilaterally control the appointments, a safeguard that India's 2023 law now lacks. This divergence highlights a troubling reversal. India, once considered the regional gold standard for electoral integrity, now appears to be weakening democratic guardrails that neighboring Pakistan, despite its own democratic deficits, still formally retains. The Election Commission of India, it although defends SIR under its constitutional and constitutional powers and cites existing mechanisms that it says have been observed. Yet, the ECI has not been able to justify the urgency of deploying a special revision now at this point. It hasn't been able to justify it. It hasn't been able to give any single reason for it. Nor has it explained why previously accepted identity proofs are now invalid, or how marginalized groups lacking access to documentation will cope with all that. And that too in such a short period of time. Apparently, the deadline they are giving is 30 days. Independent audits and stakeholders within India, their input remains absent. Clearly a transparency deficit. On July 9, 2025, with all this context in the backdrop, July 9, Rahul Gandhi led the Chakka Jam Bihar Bandh, Patna Bandh in Patna, with Tejashwi Yadav, D. Raja, his colleagues in the India Alliance. Dipankar Bhattacharya, Mukesh Sahani, and others. So they have joined hands and they have accused the ECI of mimicking the Maharashtra model of roll rigging, alleging systematic disenfranchisement of poor voters, especially in youth and marginalized communities. Dalits, women, Dalits, Muslims. Digvijaya Singh has called the 30-day monsoon season deadline impractical and unjust, which it actually is, noting Bihar's 30 million migrant workers may simply be unable to produce required documents in time, effectively stripping them of voting rights. Multiple PILs, public interest litigations, have been filed, and the Supreme Court is beginning to hear petitions on July 10 as we speak. And claimants argue the SIR is arbitrary, prima facie, unconstitutional. So it remains to be seen how the Supreme Court helps the democratic system prevail. So NDA leaders, NDA, again, National Democratic Alliance, the ruling alliance of which BJP is the major partner. Its leaders have accused opposition of hypocrisy, pointing out that they, meaning the India Alliance leaders, previously endorsed Aadhaar linkage, but now oppose it. BJP MPs have cited absurd data points like 105% Aadhaar enrollment in Kishanganj and other places as proof that roll cleanup is necessary and opposition theatrics are politically motivated. Yet, opposition responds that the procedural compliance does not remedy flawed intent, particularly when stakes are electoral and lives are marginalized. The ECI has long stood as a regional beacon of electoral integrity, I have already said. But by appearing to execute executive agendas in rushed, opaque fashion, the Commission risks losing its hard-earned moral authority. If democracy is about more than ballot and rests on trust, the notion that electoral rolls are now being manipulated for political gains undermines the very foundations of Indian democracy. In light of BJP's flailing nationalistic narrative, post-Pahalgam, and post India's attack on Pakistan, the SIR in Bihar feels less like administrative urgency and more like electoral desperation. This is no longer a question of procedural correctness. It is about institutional capture, marginalization of vulnerable voters, and most importantly, erosion of democratic norms. The Supreme Court of India's forthcoming judgment and any independent review of the SIR must reaffirm that electoral corrections cannot proceed at the cost of inclusion. Otherwise, we risk not just Bihar's democratic future, but the credibility of the Election Commission of India as a guardian of free and fair polls. Unraveled will continue to track the case closely and stand witness to how India's democracy responds when its own custodians fall under political strain. We wish you best of luck, people of Bihar, and people of India, and people of South Asia. Meet you in the next episode. Have a good one.